Now we've got 4 experts as well as all the 3 speakers. Rupa is also an expert. We're going to take up certain special situations, and I'm going to ask one by one special situation, and we'll begin with Dr. Malti. Dr. Malti, you well known for pediatric management of IBD. So you heard Nilanjana, you heard Usha. They talked to us about how the deficiencies came and what are the way forward. Is there anything special you would like to do in a pediatric age group? I will talk to below 15 years of age.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Manu, and thank you, Dr. Rupa. We all know that pediatric IBD is a unique topic. Though the disease may be seen in pediatric itself, the presentation and the problems vary according to the age of presentation. We have a group below 6 who have a different presentation. If I just take those above 6, the classical presentation, I'm not going to talk about the monogenic IBDs. Even the general IBDs, nutrition plays a very important role because it is the time of growth. And we know that especially Crohn's disease, there is growth failure, which is part of the disease. So that is one point which we feel that, it is little different from the adults. There is a thing that the growth is necessary. Growth failure occurs and steroids may affect the growth. So that is one, 2 things which are different from what we see in adults, more of malnutrition occurring them as a part of the disease. Otherwise, in the management, I think Usha took it very well. Diet has been used as a predictor or a positive factor for pediatric IBD. It has been used in the management as an exclusive enteral nutrition, especially in Crohn's disease, especially the mild and moderate Crohn's with a low PCDI score. The Naspagan thing has been said that you can use it at least first use it for 2 weeks. And then if there is an improvement, if there is a slashing down of the PCDI score, continue it at least for a minimum period of 6 weeks. And, the problem is it is not easy to give the child exclusive enteral nutrition. So sometimes we say place the NG-tube, but I have not been. One is it should be mild, moderate, and the child and the parents should be very cooperative. So now in that we are also talking about polymeric formula being as effective as the enteral, either the elemental, the intermental diet, which is known as the thing, or even amino acid base. So polymeric is okay, but still the child wants to eat what the others eat. So that is one problem we are also facing, Dr. Manu. And then, if you can avoid steroids in that small group, everyone is happy. So now I think they've come to one conclusion saying you can use partial enteral nutrition using this 50%, and then you can use a diet which is try to avoid the triggering diets, what we call them as the Crohn's disease elimination diet. So when they gave this combination, the results were as good as exclusive enteral nutrition. So you play with the child's mind also. Try to find out what he likes, and then you try to give that 50-50, and we can do that. And then we also say supplemental nutrition is very important because of their diet. I think this is the basic, Dr. Tandon. I think you may have some other questions also.
Yeah, we'll thank you, Malti. Thank you. We're going to first go through all the 4 panelists, and then I'll leave it open both for the others also. Okay. Thank you. Uday again needs no introduction. I think no one needs an introduction. He's one of our internationally well-known faculty members. Besides functional bowel, innumerable papers in many specialities from motility to gut microbiota. So Uday, there's a problem that we all come across. You have this stricturing disease, prone to subacute obstructions. You have to give them therapy. What is your advice for stricturing bowel disease? Let's say Crohn's, 2 strictures, diet.
Yeah, so thank you for the important question. So what happens is many of these Crohn's patients, yes, they have stricture plus they may have fistula. So what happens is that when there is a stricture and the stricture is symptomatic, now this patient has dietary issue because on one side, if you give real hard that the fiber is good, fruits are good, vegetables are good. In fact, epidemiological studies suggested that if somebody is on fiber diet, vegetable and fruits diet, there is a reduction in the risk of IBD. But on the other side, if you give them fiber, if you give them fruits and vegetables, now obviously this is going to precipitate obstruction. So you have no option, but in that particular situation, to reduce the roughage content of the diet. Because if you give too much roughage, is going to have repeated obstruction and the symptoms are intestinal colic. So this is one thing. But at the same time, you have to give him nutrition. So you give diet, which is having calorie, good amount of calorie, good amount of protein and fat, but reduce the fiber in it, at least for the period when he is symptomatic. Obviously, many of these patients who have structuring disease, if you reduce their inflammation with drugs such as corticosteroid, maybe with immunomodulator, maybe with biologicals, actually stricture may open up because some of the strictures are not really fibrotic strictures, but inflammatory stricture, and these may open up. So as you will see during follow-up, patient will say the diet which I was not able to tolerate, actually I am tolerating better now. So this is what it is. So you have to trade off between having nutrition, enough nutrition to maintain his body weight, but at the same time reduce the diet which may precipitate obstruction, and treating the structuring Crohn's disease simultaneously. If on treatment, actually there is an increasing frequency of obstruction and severity of obstruction, it means this was a fibrotic stricture and it is unlikely to improve just by sort of pharmacotherapy, and they would undergo surgery. One thing here is very, very important. Many of these patients have ileal disease, and if somebody has ileal disease, part of the problem they develop is vitamin B12 malabsorption, because we all know vitamin B12 is selectively absorbed in the ileum. Second thing is, in our population, you can't imagine, like 90% of the population where I work, they are vegetarian, particularly in rural areas. So if somebody is a vegetarian and at the same time he has a sort of ileal disease, now this fellow is going to be B12 deficient. So replace B12, maybe parenteral B12.
Okay, thank you, Uday. We'll come back to you. We'll move over to Devender. Devender, can you unmute yourself? Devender is one of our senior most gastroenterology consultants in Mumbai, and he's done extensive work on IBD, well-known figure in IBD circles. Devender, the question to you is, suppose a patient has been comfortable, we have followed the diet that Nilanjana and Usha have suggested, but he gets an acute flare. Is there going to be a change, a flare which is going to, let's say, last for 4 weeks or more? Is there going to be a change in the dietary pattern, Devender?
Okay, so first of all, I want to congratulate AIG for this very nice webinar, and I have learned a lot from the first two speakers. Now coming to the flare, now our patients who have flare, let's talk about the Crohn's disease, and these may be outpatient or inpatient. So the practical thing that we do, we have initial assessment of BMI, anthropometric measure, nutritional screening, albumin, and we like to do a score, MIRT, or one of the scores which measures not only malnutrition but also inflammation. And we need to have a plan. Nowadays, we are actually checking for sarcopenia also by a simple hand grip strength. So after the assessment of the calories and protein, what is most important here is we need to have a history of dietary intolerances and dietary avoidances. So many of these people avoid dairy and other products, especially fermented products. And there are many religious biases because of which people avoid this. So this needs to be corrected. And the first goal is to see that they get proteins in about 1 to 1.25 grams of protein per day and calories from 25 to 35 calories per day. Assessment by the dietitian after 1 week. If there is no improvement, then they can be protein supplementation can be added. And here I would also like to use eDiary for my patients, and this has been developed. The app has been developed by AIMS Group. In addition to this, we prefer to give either oral or intravenous iron, vitamin D, vitamin B12, and other supplementation as mentioned. Milk, as if tolerated, that they can take. And the coming back, some patients, if they don't improve, then one would consider the enteral nutrition in the form of either exclusion diet or NJ feed or NG feed. So this would be for ulcerative, for Crohn's disease. Now coming to ulcerative colitis, the principles are same. However, I would like to mention one of the recent studies from AIMS where they have used, in acute severe ulcerative colitis, they have used EEN, exclusive enteral nutrition, and they have found that the 7 days of EEN augments steroid response, and it's worth exploring for further confirmation. So this is what I would think about.
Thank you, Devender. We'll quickly move on to Partha. Partha is a consultant at the Asian Institute of Gastroenterology, a very promising author of many papers, and he and Rupa run our IBD clinic. Partha, we've just heard about an acute flare. Now, it goes into remission. We've heard Nilanjana and to some extent Usha say that you should be liberal. So what is your advice now? He's come out of the flare that Devender discussed just now. What would you advise such a group of patients?
The patient of IBD who is in remission, there are a few important factors like the goal in these patients is to prevent the next recurrence and also to screen for this malnutrition, and if it is there, we should correct that. And we should consider few facts like whether it is a type of the disease, like it is a Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, because Crohn's disease patients may have malabsorption, and even in the remission they can be malnourished more than ulcerative colitis. Then also we should see the location of the disease. If it is small bowel disease, it is more malabsorption may be there, and also the phenotype of the disease, as already has been discussed, like stricturing disease or fistulizing disease. Also history of surgery like ileocecal resection, ileal resection, or more than 60 centimeter of terminal ileal resection, and also an ulcerative colitis patient who had underwent a total colectomy with ileoanal pouch anastomosis. These patients may have B12 deficiency, and who have more than 60 centimeter of terminal ileal resected, they may require lifelong B12 supplementation. So these factors are important. Also, other factors that are important is what was the therapy that was used in achieving remission, and whether it is an adult patient or a pediatric patient, because these things are important, because in children actually exclusive enteral nutrition is used, that has been discussed, to for induction of remission. So as also two studies, one RCT and another control study, have shown that there is a role for partial enteral nutrition in maintenance of remission in these patients, because this after we withdraw the exclusive enteral nutrition, there is chance of relapse almost in 50% patient within 6 months. So there are two studies. Although they lack statistical power, there is some role of partial enteral nutrition in maintaining remission in these patients. And also about like specific diet, most of the there are several diets like specific carbohydrate diet, elimination diet. Most of them, the basic thing is they avoid dairy, processed meat, and the refined sugars. Also the emulsifiers, which calls maltodextrin, and which alters the gut barrier function and gut microbiota. So the basic of these foods can exacerbate a new relapse or new attack of or player in IBD patients. So this should be avoided. And to specifically say for ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, for ulcerative colitis, this processed meat and red meat should be avoided, and if taken, can be taken once a week. Normal meat can be taken. Unnecessary or over-restrictive lactose restriction should be avoided. And for ulcerative colitis, the patient should avoid processed meat. Also, high animal fat intake. That should be less than 30% of the total caloric intake. And also, these patients, insoluble fibers, there should be. We should keep in mind about the insoluble fibers like the potato skin or the tomato skin. This may not get digested and cause dietary intolerance. Also, I would like to emphasize that there is a role of vitamin D. If taken in a dose of 1200 units per day, the studies have shown that it can prevent further relapse in case of Crohn's disease, because Crohn's disease is a Th1 disease, whereas ulcerative colitis is a Th2 disease. The effect of vitamin D on Crohn's disease is more. So they have said that in preventing a relapse in Crohn's disease, there is a role for vitamin D as well. And also in both of them, if the patient is lactose, not a lactose intolerant, milk can be used, because there is a study in which in lactose intolerant patients, there is a double-blind crossover trial that was used in which showed that up to 240 ml per day of milk can be tolerated in these patients. So and other factors are like whatever be the therapy, that should be cost effective, because enteral nutrition or partial enteral nutrition, they are costly. So it should be therapy should be cost effective and improve the quality of life of the patient. And although the evidence for diet in IBD is not that robust, but we should have use best available evidence rather than no advice, and we should not be unduly over restrictive. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Partha. Before I'll ask two. Yes, Rupa, you want to say something? No, you are
to say something.
Yeah.
I want to say something, because something, related to nutrition and what we missed, or maybe we did not discuss. Yesterday, a young girl of 30 came with a flare, and she had acute watery diarrhea and then was in hypotension, so I admitted her. We got a scare last evening when they said that she had myocardial infarction. There was classical ST elevation, and they thought that it was an inferior wall MI. So the cardiac team came in, and then she was immediately shifted for primary angioplasty or embolectomy, whatever is needed. Because she was at 30, she was sweating profusely, blood pressure had come down. So during the angio, it was found that it was a clear angio, there was nothing. And then the Dr. Narsimhan, who is our cardiac electrophysiology head, he was called, and he said, this is very classical, it happens in IBD that there is magnesium deficiency. And now his comments, he said that this will, and the patient then went into atrial fibrillation. So this was my first time experience of a 30-year-old having this. And he said, even if you check magnesium in the blood, it may not show. A buffy coat magnesium usually highlights it. And therefore, for patients with acute diarrhea in IBD, it may be worthwhile, to supplement magnesium. The patient is well today after magnesium. Of course, the cardiac team is taking care of her today. But I thought it was quite a relevant experience to share with everyone.
Yes, that's something new for us, Rupa. Well, we have got 3 speakers, and since Iris has joined us late, I'll ask her. Uday is commenting.
What was the potassium level?
That was surprising. Potassium was okay. We thought that potassium normal, magnesium low, unlikely. And that's what I exactly told the cardiologist. But he did the wonders, and the patient is better today.
What I'm saying is, sometime hypomagnesemia, when you correct potassium, actually you can't correct in patient of hypomagnesemia unless you normalize the magnesium. So one of the causes for refractory hypokalemia is hypomagnesemia.
Yes.
And hypokalemia can lead to cardiac problem, as you are
Yes.
saying.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so that's really amazing, because we read in the textbook that magnesium deficiency needs to be checked, but I don't think we do that actively, and we really don't pay that much attention. So thank you, Rupa, for highlighting it.
So, Iris, Professor Iris Dotan, your center in Israel, is a specialist dietitian consultation given to all patients, or you take it up yourself and only call them if there is a a tough situation, like we discuss special situations?
Thank you so much, Dr. Tandon, for asking this question, and thank you for the wonderful discussion. So actually, you're touching a very important point at the Rabin Medical Center in Petah Tikva, Israel, and I think that in many centers in Israel as well, diet is a central point. And we have, not only that we have several dietitians in the IBD group, we have more dietitians in the division of GI, and every patient is being seen by a dietitian, is provided specific IBD-related consultation, specifically, like you asked very nicely, for a patient with strictures in Crohn's disease, for a patient after pouch surgery in ulcerative colitis, for a patient before surgery and after surgery. So every patient is being seen by a dietitian. And not only this, we are trying to provide an online, so to say, dietary approach, meaning that if a patient came all the way to see us, we're trying that he or she will have the consultation on the same day. And our dietitians are actually equal part of the multidisciplinary team. And actually, I believe that Lihi Godni, one of our dietitians, is online now with you, and Sarin and many the other dietitians are participating in the AIG Rabin Medical Center collaboration because we think they are such central members of the multidisciplinary team.
Thank you. Nilanjana, it looks like you and your colleagues are going to be busy with the rising incidence of IBD.
Yes, I hope to give us enough referrals.
Yeah. Usha, very briefly, one special situation, pregnancy. Do you think anything changes from what has gone on, or, we talked about pediatric stricturing, etc., etc. So pregnancy with, extra requirements, just supply extra or something special comes in? No, you are muted. Usha, you are muted.
Thank you, Dr. Chandan. During pregnancy, there is an increase in the energy requirement, protein requirement, and there's also nutritional deficiencies such as iron as well as folic acid, which comes on during pregnancy. So these things have to be supplemented. And if the patient cannot take oral iron, then we can give them an IV iron infusion. This is regarding the micronutrient component. Second problem is during pregnancy, in the initial first trimester, patients don't tend to eat too much because of hyperemesis during the first trimester. So at that time, we don't bother so much with the diet, just continue on an easy diet for them. Later on, when the fetal growth increases, patients of IBD go into remission because during pregnancy, and they will be able to tolerate protein diet. They have constipation, so I would not like them to be constipated because constipation will increase stasis of the gut and secondary increase in flora. So these patients, I keep them on some fiber containing things so that they have easy bowel movement. If required, we can also add lactulose, which is also prebiotic during pregnancy. Otherwise, we continue them on the routine diet during pregnancy. We rarely have a problem during pregnancy with handling diet in them.